So we'll go ahead and get started. And I know the couple more people, I'm sure, trickle in here. So first off, welcome everybody. Super excited for you all to be here for our first panel discussion of Women's History Month. So over the course of this month, every Monday for the rest of the month, we're going to have some great panel discussions with various women in our industry, this week being suppliers. So super thankful to have Pamela, Stacy, and Liz here with us. And we're just going to talk about a wide variety of topics, things more tied to industry, work-life balance, all those great topics. I know we got a lot of really great questions submitted from different members. So to start off, just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Denise Chariya, Director of Marketing at THOR and current chair of the RV Women's Alliance. And again, we're just so excited to have you all with us. So first, what I would love to do is give each of our panelists an opportunity to introduce themselves, talk a little bit about what their role is, and what their journey was to get to the RV industry. So we will start with Pamela.
Hi, good morning. I'm Pamela VanderMel. I'm with Lippert, and I have been with Lippert for about 22 years. My journey into the industry was not planned, like many of us. Started out actually in the public utility sector and ended up with a supplier, DeWalt Manufacturing, just by happen chance.
Liz.
Hi, I'm Liz White, the Director of Sales for RV and Automotive for Starbrite. I have been with Starbrite for about 2 years now. I've been in the RV industry for 15. Like Pamela, my journey into the RV industry was not something that I had originally planned, but I'm very, very grateful that landed here. I was in commercial real estate. And I had a friend that was a hairdresser who was actually working for an RV manufacturer rep group and needed some help with Excel spreadsheets. So went in to help her with that and got a job offer. So yeah, funny how things work.
Great. And Stacy?
Hi, my name is Stacy Setty, and I'm the Director of Sales at Optronics, Inc. in Goshen. And I have been here for 9 years in this director position. I started 25 years ago at Levanger, was my first position in the RV industry. And I had a friend that worked there and she said, oh, we're looking for a cycle counter. And I went over and started cycle counting for them and then moved into sales, and it just kind of kept evolving. So I've been in a couple different positions throughout the 25 years, but I've always stayed on the supplier side in the RV industry primarily. Now we have ventured out past RV, but that's still my passion.
Great. So I guess we'll start in kind of when thinking back to earlier in your career. So what is a piece of advice that you wish you would have received when starting in this industry? And Liz, why don't we start with you?
Okay, there's quite a few, but I'll limit it to one. I think the biggest piece of advice I would give anybody starting in this industry is just make sure that you're true to yourself. Sometimes you go into these meetings or you're with like higher ups, and I think one of the biggest downfalls of internally people is kind of you go into these meetings and you're afraid to ask questions. So I think be true to yourself and don't be afraid to speak up and ask questions and give your input.
Great. Pamela?
I think I would suggest to get involved in organizations and meet people outside of your immediate circle. Really utilize those relationships. I know I so wish RVWA had been around when I first entered this industry. We just didn't have groups like this. I was super blessed to have Bruce from RVIA reach out to me. So I had some chances there, but really just expanding beyond what maybe your immediate team that you're working with every day and meeting more and getting more involved.
Great. And Stacy?
I mean, I think I always say this too shall pass. I mean, in a fast-paced industry, every day is a problem from the time you get up till you finish up at the rest of the day. So I just always say, take one at a time. It's going to pass. We're going to get through it. We're going to fix the issues. So I wish I would have thought that when I was younger, because you always just felt like you had to solve everything. And honestly, you just can't. It's just not possible. The other thing is, I mean, from the time I started, I grew up in this area, so you just never burn bridges. I mean, the buyers, they move around, the salespeople move around, we all move around a lot, but you never know who's related to who. So in all aspects, I try to really teach my team is you just never burn bridges, because it's a tight-knit industry and we want to all, respect each other.
Great advice, which kind of leads into kind of another question that I know we had, just in terms of, from your perspective, what really makes a great leader in this industry? So this industry is unique. I think what you were talking about of how every relationship extends beyond maybe your current one with people, and people do move around. So what do you think are some of those qualities that make a good leader for this industry?
I mean, the same qualities for all industries, just being honest and persistent. I mean, they don't want to hear the honest truth at that time, but they really do, and they're going to respect you for it. So if you can't supply a product or there's a quality issue, take ownership of it, try to fix it. And I mean, there's times when I have to say, you know what, I would call my competitor. I'm not going to shut your line down. I hate to do that, but that's just something you have to do. And I think you learn that as time goes on to be a good leader and to, have successful in this industry. You just have to be honest. You have to be persistent. I mean, I've had people I've called on for many years, and then just one day they call and say, hey, I'm ready to buy lights from you. And I'm like, okay, it's been 10 years, but you have to stay persistent on that. And then, I mean, just having several opportunities that come up, you just have to always be on your A game, I would say, to be a good leader in this industry, because it moves quickly, but so we have to move quickly as well.
Pamela, any other qualities from your standpoint that make a great leader in this industry?
Yeah, I think definitely for our industry, flexibility. You have to be ready to change as you need to for the market, or your customer needs, anything like that. Absolutely passionate to win, passionate about winning, and thinking outside the box, thinking outside the norm. And personally, I think great leaders in our industry are those who camp. Use the products, get out, use them. That's the best way to be able to lead others and really understand. And if you're not ready to invest in one, rent one. Ask a friend.
Or come to the RVWA campout.
There you go.
What about you, Liz? Anything else you'd like to add on the qualities side?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really show up and follow up. It's people are people look at you and they establish, like, it's all about establishing the relationships. But I feel like a lot of people learn to respect and appreciate your word, and just make sure, if there's a meeting, you show up, you're on time, follow up, do what you tell people you're going to do. And I think that's a very big leadership role skill people need to have.
So how do you approach kind of keeping learning and growing in your time in the industry, as being a what I will call tends to be a under-resourced industry? Everyone has lots of hats that they're wearing at all times. So what are some things that you do to prioritize or keep finding those moments to learn and grow in your role?
Honestly, I mean, the industry is ever changing. It's changing all the time, from every aspect of manufacturing to distribution to dealers to retail consumers. And I think just staying up to date, speaking with people, looking at industry trends, going on, the Facebook groups of people that are actually RVing, and just kind of making sure that you're staying current, but also trying to progress further with innovation and things like that. Just really putting research in and speaking with people and understanding the market as it is today versus how it will be tomorrow.
Great. Stacy, what about you from a learning and growing standpoint?
I mean, I think it's important to stay in the know. I mean, on current events, on tariffs, on RV Daily, who's switching leaderships, who's doing what they're doing, to stay in the know of the industry itself and what's coming down the pipeline and what to be prepared for as a company, so that we're ready for that as well. Staying involved, like Pamela said, I wish we would have had RVWA 25 years ago, because we weren't part of any of that. So, going to the RV breakfast, doing the RVWA events, just staying with people, connecting. And I think that's extremely important, especially right now in the volatility that we're in. And I mean, on my personal time, where I travel all the time, I'm on the road a lot. So I listen to a lot of podcasts and just, the most recent one was how to manage people in a chaotic environment. And that's what we're in. And so we just have to, I like to sometimes listen to podcasts, see people outside of these industries, what other industries do, instead of just living in our bubble right here, because we do have to adapt to changing circumstances, and that's happening every day. So to be a consistent leader, you have to adapt.
Pamela?
Yeah, excellent points. I agree with both of them. And, just continuing that listening and asking questions and inserting yourself, even if it's something not in your immediate realm, it's okay to be curious and ask those questions. Sometimes maybe it's asking your leader, hey, can you tell me about that project meeting? If it's something not confidential, anything that can be shared, just to continue to open up those opportunities.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest things is a lot of it is kind of taking it in your own control and putting that learning and growing on yourself. So I think a lot of what we're talking about, whether it's using time to listen to podcasts or Pamela, I think that's a great point of just making the ask, that a lot of times people are willing to share, and the more you learn about things outside of your direct responsibilities, a lot of times the better you are at your job, which I think is something that I know personally, as somebody who works on the OEM side. I love getting the chance to speak with you guys on the supplier side, because it gives such great perspective of the challenges that you all have and what we have going on, and can really, I think, just helps everyone be better at their respective roles. So that's great. We'll go into kind of in this world of chaos. And this one, Pamela, we'll start with you. What advice would you give someone struggling with burnout in this industry?
I would say, if you're struggling with burnout, really, again, look outside your immediate circle. There has been so much growth in our industry as far as opportunities. Maybe you're burnout in the role that you have been in, but whether it be marketing or, production areas, design, engineering, service, the transportation area, there's so many new opportunities there that didn't exist 10 years ago. So really just taking a fresh look at what else is out there that fuels your passion, because there's so many things in our industry of different areas to get into, utilizing talents we have and being able to grow in other areas too.
That's great. Liz?
Yeah, I mean, in burnout in like a current position, I mean, I would say there's some things I think everybody, has on a day-to-day basis. It's that in manufacturing, especially, it's like, okay, don't want to deal with this thing. It's kind of frustrating. You've got all these different projects and all these different plans that you're working on. And I think just taking a step to remember that, like, this is something that you have to deal with in all jobs, and just know, okay, I can get through this. It's something I don't want to do. If I just, get through it, push along. Things are going to change. I mean, again, this industry is ever changing all the time. And I think just maybe taking a step back and having a coffee and coming back and doing, those things that kind of tend to burn you out, just know it'll pass and we'll get through it.
And Stacy?
I mean, I think it's important to just take a breather. For me, I mean, I have to just shut off my phone occasionally, or take a day or 2 days and say, okay, no emails, no phone calls, no nothing from the whole work side, because it's so easy when we're connected to our phones to see every email that comes in, no matter if it's night, in the middle of the night, Saturday, Sunday. So take that breather, take that time to get away from it. My boss is pretty funny, and he always says, we're just selling lights. Like, we're not doing brain surgery. We're just selling lights. And it's important to know that and to think about it. So sometimes when he emails me on the weekend, I'm like, okay, we're just selling lights. We're not doing that today. So you have to take some time and be funny about it, because that is true. I mean, at the end of the day, we all want to supply our customers, but we can all survive without it. And it's important to take a step back and look at that. And for my team, I mean, sometimes when I see burnout in my team, I say, okay, which customer do you want to get rid of? Let's switch them around a little bit. Not everybody's the same flavor. Not everybody likes everybody. So I try to switch things up when I know they're just burnout and they're just doing the monotonous and they're dealing with really high pressure people. Sometimes I take it for a while, sometimes we hand it off, but to try to take some stress off of them. And then lastly is just focus on what we can control. I mean, unfortunately, there's so many things that are out of our control right now that we can't deal, we can't control the production rates, we can't control shutdowns, we can't control tariffs. So for my team, I just say, as long as you're reporting that to me and I know you're aware of that, that's all I can ask of them.
No, that's great. And I would say too, in terms of helping manage, would love if anybody has any other guidance on helping manage when, as you were just explaining, burnout is happening on your team, and what maybe some things that you've done to help that across your various teams. Anybody? Oh, there you go.
Probably just teamwork. I mean, if I've experienced this with people I worked with before who, reported to me. And I think it's just like, okay, that they're burnt out. So you offer to kind of help, or you guys work through things together. And I think, we're in the recreational vehicles industry, right? So like, we're selling a lifestyle, we're selling fun, and we don't obviously want anybody working with us, beside us, under us, to feel that burnout. So I think it's more of that like community effort where, you just kind of get together, you just help it out. Like, I'll take this part, you take that part. That would be something I would suggest what I've done in the past.
Great. Next up is, which I always love this question. Who were some of your role models or mentors in the RV industry, and really what impact did they have on you? And I know a lot of times have different impact depending on when in your career these people played a role. So just would love to understand kind of when you had a great mentor, kind of what impact did that have on your career? And we'll start with Stacy on this one.
I mean, that's a hard one for me. I've had several, different mentors and people that I've looked up to, but Dick Levanter would certainly be one, since he gave me my start. He really taught me, what it was like to sell. He loved to have fun, but he loved to work too. So it was like, you can have fun and still be, successful. He taught us to be polished and ready all the time. It's like, you may have fun at the show, but you better be at the show at 9 o'clock, and you better be polished. You better be ready to go. So he really, I think, is one that I always remember, that I think influenced me to get into the RV and to stay into the RV industry because of the things that he taught me. There's several different women in the industry, different reps. Heather Jenks from Genesis, she was one that I kind of grew up with. Several different buyers like Kathy Block and many of the Jayco guys, that I think has really made an influence, that we've bonded and we, bounce things off of each other when we are burnout and we're thinking we can't do this ever again, but you do. You just you get through it. And then just working with good people. I think surround yourself with the best that you can. And I have I have a great team, and that's exciting for me. And I love to watch the women come in. A lot of them leave because they have families, or because they find a better position or more money. And I always encourage that, even though I hate to lose them. You can't, I encourage them to keep growing. And like Pam said, if there's other positions they want to entertain, I just want to see them happy and successful at the end of the day.
What about you, Pamela?
Yes. So very early on, Jim Dewald was definitely someone who impacted me. He was the original owner of Dewald Manufacturing over in Mishawaka. It was actually part of my first entry into this industry, unplanned. However, one of the things that really stuck with me as far as him and the way that he handles his team members was making sure to go out on that floor once a week and speak to every person. I might be a few feet behind him and going, that's Denise. When you have over 100 and some employees, but that employee didn't know that. So taking the time to set all the other stuff aside that seems like the most important, and making those connections with team members, even if it's only for a minute once a week, and the huge impact that makes. Another one is Andy Murray, he's retired now, Chief Sales Officer with Lippert. So over 20 years ago, he took a chance and made me GM of a Lippert division, and actually created the first female GM within Lippert. So I owe him a lot for taking a big chance at a time that there weren't as many women in these positions. and just really showing the example again. Another thing with him that stuck with me early on was actually when I went to meet with him to have a discussion regarding that role, coming out from behind your desk, even if it's just 2 folding chairs off to the side in your office, and being able to sit with people without that, what is sometimes perceived as a divider, as something that creates less open communication between folks. So just some little things that, people don't even realize. It's just the normal actions they take in a day and have really impacted me and stuck with me through the years.
And Liz?
Yeah, I have a few. So when I started in the RV industry, I was actually working for a manufacturer rep group. So Rosie Hirsch, I worked for RVLI. Rosie Hirsch was a huge mentor for me. I worked underneath her for 8 years, helped her run a rep group. And the really cool thing about her, a few things. So she was one of the first handful of women actually as a dealer sales rep in the industry. And so that was like really powerful, like to be a woman in the industry, to like have that kind of person as a role model to kind of show you and guide you. But the nicest thing about her is that she was used to doing something in a certain way, and she really did open up and allow me to like expand and give my ideas and say, hey, well, what if we try this? And so that was really, really impactful. Something that, was kind of the crux of me being brought up in this industry. And there's a few females, in this industry as well. I mean, Susan Carpenter, Kathy Sutton, those two were like someone I've always looked at and kind of said, hey, these are really strong women in this industry. They've been here for a long time. And it helped kind of model, like, I'm starting in the industry really young. I mean, it was like, I want to be like them, and I want to show up, and I want to follow through, and I want to, be somebody that's, involved in things and passionate as a woman in the industry.
What advice would you all have for really finding those mentors in people's careers? So, what are the things kind of you did or looked for to find those people who would help elevate you and help support you in your role?
I mean, I think right now the RVWA is probably the best asset that you could have as far as, finding mentors, being directed to mentors. I have to be honest, I think it's probably much harder now than it was 20 years ago, when everything was individually owned and every company was a family-owned company, and you actually knew the owners, you actually knew the families. I mean, we all hung out together. So now that we're big conglomerates, I think it's much harder to get involved. I think it's much harder to even build those relationships. I have 2 really young reps that say, how do you know all these people? They don't talk to me like that, because we don't do that anymore. It's just a different industry. So to get involved, I would say RVIA, RVWA, and just finding those people that can really direct you, because it is a different industry than what I grew up with.
I think also looking at some other individuals that perhaps are not your direct leaders, or even, in your immediate circle again. So I have several folks who have mentored me over the years who never were my leader, but they were in areas, and I knew they were very knowledgeable. I watched the way they interact with other individuals, and I knew that that was an example that I wanted to follow. And just reaching out to say, like, hey, I really love the way you communicated that in the last meeting. I'd love to have some time with you. And same thing for some individuals that, I'm mentoring. They don't work directly for me, but we've had other interactions, or they've reached out. And so we may have, just a brief conversation once a month, and there may be some others that it's a little more involved. So I think sometimes we have this image of what a mentor needs to be, and it needs to be, someone at the very top of the organization, and they have 5 degrees, and that's not always real life. There's a lot of things that have really helped us get to where we are, and by taking that in from so many different individuals in different walks of life even.
Could not agree more. Liz, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I was going to say that too. I mean, everybody has a different definition of what a mentor is. And so, to call out and say, oh, I want to find a mentor. It's like, of course you can do that. But I think getting involved, and if your company's having meetings, make sure that you go and make your own mentor, or like let your experiences in meetings and things like that kind of shape who who you look at as a mentor and then get in contact with that person, or just kind of mimic some of the things that they do. I mean, there's a different level of mentorship in everybody's mind. And I think just being more involved and you know, a meeting may not have anything to do with you, but see if you can sit on in it to learn more from other people, I think is the most important thing.
Definitely. And I think something that sometimes is overlooked is also how much it can mean to someone, if it is somebody that you've observed that you really like their leadership style or the way that they run a meeting, or, you know, how they've developed a relationship. I think one thing I would encourage everyone is don't be shy to send that person a note, stop by their office, you know, tell them that you really noticed something. It can mean a lot even to people who are in positions that we don't know if people like the way we're doing things. And, you know, it's that appreciation really should move both directions, both up and down. And I think, and across and sideways, and really feel like to mirror really what these guys are saying is I've learned more from people who do nothing to do with the specific like job that I do on a daily basis. I've learned so much from people cross-functionally, and I think that that's what makes, you know, we're very thankful that RVWA provides some of that guidance. And we do have a mentor program, which I'll just call out, that is something where we are able to match folks up. So definitely check it out on our website. You can apply to be part of that program, but it's just another great way to make that other connection with somebody else within our industry and that perspective. So kind of building from there, what is something that you've really noticed that has changed about the RV industry in your time in it? It can be something small, something big, but what is something you've really noticed that has changed within the RV industry during your tenure? We'll start with Liz.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 15 years into the industry, right? And when I started, I mean, it's a lot different now. There's a lot more women in the industry right now than there was when I started, and I'm sure it was a lot different. But when I got into the industry, I was one of the youngest females. And it's so nice and refreshing to see that like more women are in this industry and that it isn't so much this like, you know, the old version of the male dominated, you know, type industry. I think so. That's really, really nice and encouraging to see. The industry as a whole is completely different, you know, acquisitions and mergers. And, you know, I go through and I say, you know, the major changes, I guess I would just outline: more women in the industry, very empowering and exciting. And the industry is forever changing, like, which is one of the most exciting and fun things about it. So.
Pamela?
Definitely the social media influence and everything going on in that area. And then also, just as Liz said, the change as far as the quantity of independent OEMs out there and even dealerships. As that has changed, it's changed so many things for all of us as well.
Stacy?
I mean, I would agree with both of them. I mean, there's a lot more women and prominent women in the industry now than what there were 25 years ago. And so that's great to see. And it's just fun to see people succeed in that market. And, you know, innovation, it doesn't feel like we're innovative compared to some of the other markets that I call on, but we have, you know, moved in that direction. I've seen it a lot more since COVID. I feel like just having, you know, more innovation. We went from incandescent to LED finally after 20 years, and just different things that we're seeing shift because the younger generation is going to demand those things. Like you said, social media, I mean, they want the cool stuff. They don't want the old stuff. They don't want the matching stuff. So I think it's fun to watch that. And I mean, a lot of us tease that it's not as fun as it used to be because obviously it is all owned by 2 or 3 people. So it's very different. But I still think in that market, you know, it's fun to have all the plants still making individual decisions and making some decisions on their own so they can diversify themselves. And in general, I mean, I really don't feel it's changed dramatically in 20 some years compared to other industries that I call on. But I do think we're at a shift right now where they're being forced to change to the new technology.
Great. So kind of bouncing back to how you do what you do. So are there any habits or routines that have really helped you kind of juggle both the professional and personal side of things? I hate to use the word work-life balance because let's face it, it's probably never going to be a balance for most of us. But let's say your work-life management. So are there things that you've done that's really helped with you, help that for the last couple of years? We'll start. Stacy, why don't we start with you?
Okay. I mean, for me, I just have to stay organized because I travel every other week primarily. And then on the weeks I'm not, I'm here at the office with my team. So staying organized, I usually pick like 1 hour on Sunday to look at my calendar, make sure I know what days I'm supposed to be doing what. And even like funny things as women, like it's show season for me. So it's crazy. So in January, I make sure I have like 4 pair of pants that fit and 3 or 4 Optronics shirts and new shoes because no shoes are comfortable at a show, and make sure all my hair stuff is all packed and ready so that way I can prioritize that instead of being on Sunday saying, oh geez, I have nothing to take this week. And I really try to, even on Fridays, take off early and go home and pack if I'm flying out on Sunday night or Monday so that I can still have the weekend with my family and spend time. So I think it's really for me just staying organized and just realizing like you have to have all your ducks in a row if you're going to work this kind of schedule.
Liz?
Yeah, work home life balance is a challenge, but I think when you love what you do, it's like you just make it, it's staying organized. I mean, people laugh at me all the time because I'm not like a digital calendar person. I'm like a let's handwrite it out and bring it with me type person. I've always been that way and always will be. So just having everything on a calendar and just kind of noting, I've got 2 really young boys, so they're, 8.5 and 10. And so just making sure like, you have a job to do, but you have home life to do. And so if I have one email that I have to get done, it's like, okay, get that done, but make sure you do prioritize your home life too, because, you need to be successful. You need to get your job done. But at the end of the day, like you need to make it work. And if you can push off one email for 20 minutes to handle something, then you can do that. It's just a matter of prioritizing, staying organized, and making sure you do just take a time to like have that home life balance as well.
How about you, Pamela?
Definitely my calendar. If you take that from me, I'm going to be completely lost and not make it to anything, that's for sure. Also trying to plan ahead. So, similar to what Stacy was saying, using the weekend to figure out what's planned for meals the next week or the night before to plan things for the next day. Always checking to see who slid a meeting in you might not be aware of. I'd say I'm a little better now than I was previously, as far as, what Liz was mentioning of saying, okay, it's time to turn this off and 100% focus on things other than work. I definitely spent way too many years making the dinner and doing the homework and doing emails all at the same time on the kitchen counter. So as I lecture or advise my team members to make sure they don't do that, I try to make sure I take my own advice as well and really just, in fact, my word for this year is embrace, not just embrace the tough stuff, but really embrace that good stuff and family time and be 100% in. I think that really removes a lot of the stress that we have when we're focusing on work. If we are like, hey, Sunday, I dedicated everything I had to, those things that were not work. And so I feel like I'm 100% charged and ready to go today.
Great. I think it's always one that everyone's always going to struggle with, but I think preparation, as you guys have really reiterated, is very helpful. And I think too, I love how the idea of making sure that your team also holding yourself accountable to the same level you hold your team. And I also think transparency has a lot to do with it as well. So, even when I do have to work late, occasionally I'll schedule emails to go out the next morning so that I'm not really advocating for, I know I need to get something done, but not showcasing that things need to be done, when they come in. It's okay for it to go out at 8 the next morning, stuff like that. And it's just really nice to hear that that is something that's being done across the board. So it's great. So what I'd love to do is open it up for any questions from the group. Does anyone have any questions for these ladies? Anybody? Okay, well then I'm going to ask another question. If anybody does have a question, feel free to throw it in chat if you would rather, or jump in. So one thing that talking about specifically on the supplier side of things, what do you think is, outside of just the bit of chaotic nature of our current times, what is something that you think is that is impacting the supplier community, maybe more so than the rest of the industry?
I mean, obviously the tariffs are a concern in all markets and all suppliers. Also just production rates, you know, there's so many closing, there's so many not working, not knowing when they're working. So not only is it hard for us to know what kind of supply to bring in, but also our truck every day. You know, sometimes they'll call me at 5:30 and they're like, I'm here, and they're not open, or they're not here. Why did you send me here? And I'm like, well, we didn't know they weren't open. So I think the challenge is, you know, on that side is just pricing and staying innovative. It's very hard to stay up with your competitors on markets because, I mean, there's only so many ways you can sell these products to the same customers. So I think it's much harder right now just due to, I mean, since COVID, it's like through COVID, everyone ran a lot and we had no product. And then we all brought in a ton of product and now no one's running. So we've got a warehouse full of stuff that in 2 years, they're going to want something new. So you're trying to get rid of it. So honestly, I feel like the last 3 or 4 years has been harder on suppliers than, you know, probably the whole career that I've spent doing in the supplier side.
Pamela or Liz, anything you guys want to add?
Yeah, I mean, the supplier side of managing, you know, how much to produce on certain products, right? I mean, when you were COVID, it was 2019 was normal. And then we had 2020, 2021, and it was like complete off the charts change in how we do business completely. And I think right now in the industry as a supplier, we're like trying to get back to this 2019 where it's like you can actually analyze and study and kind of understand the market trends. We're not there yet, but we'll get there. And that part of it is really challenging. And, you know, like Stacy said, there's a lot of different acquisitions and different now people making same products. And I think the innovation is huge. You know, what can we as suppliers offer in addition to just our products, but like sales tools and learning and trainings and things like that. So it's not just that we manufacture a product and streamline that process. It's a lot more than that. It's the marketing aspect. It's the training aspect. It's making sure that we bring value, you know, to everybody that we do business with.
Great. All right. Well, those were all of my questions. I'll open up one more time. Anybody have any questions they would like to ask? Okay, so we did get one. Thank you. Let's see. So we do have a question in regards to, you know, to what level are you looking at the end consumer from a supplier perspective? Seeing that most of you, you know, from a customer standpoint, we're talking about the OEMs or the people putting the product together, but has anything really changed, or what conversations are being had around the end consumer?
Yeah, I mean, I can go first if the other two don't mind. You know, Starbrite, we sell cleaning products and fuel stabilizers and all kinds of different things. And kind of like taking that step back, like, okay, we're back in after COVID, right? And for lack of a better word, we have to start reselling in a different way than we just had things coming in. So doing that, it was, you know, me as a supplier going and visiting dealerships and seeing what's out there and creating, you know, sales tools, shelf talkers with QR codes that have videos, something to help sell the product through to the end consumer. It's, you know, marketing out to different marketing platforms, like getting our product out there to the end consumer. And I think it's one of the things, honestly, in our industry that that I think we still have a little bit of work to do, but I think that the end consumer is the most important. So getting in front of dealer, giving them the tools, getting on the social media platforms and promoting your products, or working with anybody that will help, you know, touch the retail customer to try and get them to want your products. You know, I think it's a lot about marketing and information and training.
Anything you guys want to add to that?
Yeah, we are super focused on the consumer, absolutely. So we do sell direct to the consumer, but also those products we're selling to the OEM manufacturer or even to the dealers. We know that ultimately they're going to end up in the consumer's hands. So that's a major item for us, to the point of even we have our own tech institute for training, and we now have schools that we put on a 3-day school for the retail owner of the RV products, for them to, you know, come in and join us for 3 days and really understand how to fully use the items during those schools. If they have questions on other products, we're happy to help them with that too. Just, you know, really recognizing it's that consumer and their satisfaction with, it doesn't matter whose RV it is or whose product it is, for our entire industry. And just so focused on the better experience they have, the better we are all going to be.
Absolutely.
And I do think it's important to piggyback, like on the show in September, you know, if you can show your products there. We don't sell to dealers, so we only sell to OEMs, but it's important for them to see the different lights that are out there. We always try to take the most innovative ones, because they can drive that through the manufacturers if they're looking for something different. So I think it's important to support that show and, you know, talk to the dealers at that show.
Great. One other question that came up is around kind of with talking about social media and with end consumers. There does seem to be a lot of negativity out there around things in general. Really, how are you going about combating some of that negativity and really bringing things back to the RVing and the activity itself? So how are you guys doing that currently?
We have a paid search. I mean, we have somebody internally that does all of our marketing, and he's very in tune with social media and with paid search advertising and things like that. And so, you know, there's a lot of Facebook groups. I think it's primarily where a lot of the end, you know, actual RVers are there talking and, you know, camaraderie and asking questions. And I think just being involved there, answering questions, if something comes up, that you help answer a question. If there's negative comment, you know, reaching out to that customer, like messaging them, asking them to clarify their concern, or maybe giving them the information, that's very helpful. I mean, it's a task and a job, but I think right now it's the most important thing, and that's how we do it. We have a guy who's actually dedicated to answering questions and kind of following up on those types of reviews, positive and negative.
Yeah, same for us. We also have teams who are watching social media. We have our own Lippert Scouts page, and whether it's a negative comment on there or one of our manufacturers' pages, we're always available. On our own, you know, we'll actually reply right there publicly so everyone can see, and then really encourage that person to reach out to us and let's, you know, have a conversation and try to resolve your issue. Or I loved a response that I saw one out last week because it was so kind and polite, and actually stated, while your statement is not factual, we appreciate the time you took to write it and would love to talk with you further about it. So just trying to encourage them to, you know, hey, let's take the opportunity and turn what has been negative for you and turn it into a positive. They don't post those, unfortunately, as often, but we're going to keep trying.
Sure.
And I think something that I've also really noticed is also looking at negative comments a little bit differently and categorizing them not just as negative, but what is that consumer feeling? Are they disappointed? Are they angry? Are they like really just taking the time to see how you can resolve that? Because we know that, you know, there are going to be concerns or challenges with RVs over time. It's a house going down the road, but just making sure that us as an industry is supportive of those consumers. I think that's a universal thing that I'm very excited to see so much effort both on the supplier, OEM, dealer, across the board, that really seen what an impact it's making of just taking that time to make sure we understand what that concern is and where that negativity is coming from, and then what we can do to resolve it. So that's great. Awesome. Well, that is the end of our time for today. So thank you again so much, Liz, Stacy, and Pamela, for being part of our panel today. And again, as a reminder, we have panels the next 3 Mondays. So please sign up and join us, as well as a couple of call outs about the camp out is the first weekend of May. Registration is now open if you have not been, it is a great time. As well as we have a golf scramble happening June 20th, and be on the lookout for summer series and symposium information to come soon. And thank you everybody for joining in your time today.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.